Hey everybody, Tom Balator here again, this time with a walkthrough for problem number 2 in P-Set 1. If you haven't finished problem number 1 yet, go back and do it right now because problem number 2 simply builds on top of it. Thinking about my code for these, yeah, it's virtually identical. There's just like one or two different little tweaks that happen here given a little change in specification. So actually, let's look at that specification first. What are they asking you to do, or what are you being asked to do in problem number 2? Assume S is a string of lowercase characters, same as problem number 1. Write a program that prints the number of times the string Bob occurs in S. Okay, so that's the little twist here. Instead of looking at a single character and checking to see if it's a vowel or not, A, B, or A, E, I, O, U, this time we're looking for a string of characters. Well, a sequence of characters, B, O, B in this case. So let's do this. Let's take a look at what I think some of the big ideas were for week number 1. If you didn't see the walkthrough for number 1, that's fine. For problem number 1, that's fine. The main points were if statements, flow control, comparison operations on strings. And this problem is really looking at this operations on strings, I think. The key questions here we have is, well, first of all, how do you slice strings? We're going to talk about that in a second. And then how do you iterate over the string? I think the iteration that we have to do here is structured a little bit different than it was in problem number 1. And you've seen already in the lectures how to slice strings. We had this example of the string Eric, E-R-I-C. If you have these square brackets following it, 1:3 square bracket, that will give you an answer of, do you remember? You should by now. It's R-I. Okay, that's the way these things work. There was a really nice exploration of what was called advanced string slicing in the first exercise in the second part of week 1. By the way, if you haven't noticed this on the edX page, there are these little notes or sometimes just sort of information that's there that you have to click on to see. If you haven't done that, I definitely recommend you do that. Here there was a really nice explanation of how to slice strings. And then you work through this. Again, my assumption is that you finish all the finger exercises. If you haven't done that, go back and do that. So let's play around in Python just a little bit here and think about how we can slice strings. Let's say we've got S is getting B-O-B-O-B. So that's a string B-O-B-O-B. How many Bobs are in there? How do we count the number of Bobs here? Well, visually we could do it. We can just look at it and say, okay, well, there's a Bob right here. I move along. No, there's 2 Bobs. How could you find a slice here that's a Bob? How would you go through the slicing here? As we just saw in that advanced slicing tutorial, well, you just type S, square bracket. Let's starting with the first one here, and let's go to the second element. Now, this is going to be wrong, right? Remember 0, 1, 2. You get a feeling like that when you look at least I do. And if you do that, actually, you only get the first 2 elements, the 0th and the first element, B-O. Remember that this start, this is start, and then this is stop here. That stop one is non-inclusive. So if you want to have the third element, 1, 2, 3, or 0, 1, 2, that element right here included, you have to go up to 3 here. So that would give you that. So we know right now for an S that is B-O-B-O-B that this substring, this slice of S is indeed equal to Bob. Let's say we shift that up 1:4. Excuse me. Then you get OBO. Well, that's of course moved up 1. And you can see where we're going with this. If you go to 2:5, then you get another Bob. What happens if you go past this? 3:6. Well, it knows there's no 6 there, so it just doesn't add anything onto that string that you're getting, that you're subsetting. So this is actually going to come up in problem number 3 when many of you will be getting out of index errors. But for right now, you actually don't have to worry so much about that sort of problem that you might be getting. So I said that this problem is very similar to problem number 1, and it is. The question is, how do you iterate over this? How do you look at these these right here? Let's look at this one, and this one. How would you design a program to allow you, instead of saying 0, 1, and 2, 3, 4, and 5, how would you design a program that would allow you to have a variable in here, say I perhaps, that would allow you to iterate over i's maybe this is a first I, this is an I that's somewhere down the line, how would you be able to design a program like that? Once you solve that problem, the problem's actually solved, right? I think the general structure that most people will probably have is some sort of iterate over a string, right? And then you're going to have some sort of condition if substring is equal to this BOB, sorry, then add to tally. And of course, when you're done with that, you just want to print out the tally. So that's the main thing. I think one thing that might come up here that might also be difficult is the structure of this loop that you might use. I think a for loop is probably a natural choice for this. But in the for loop that we saw before, you'll recall it was something like, and I'm not going to execute this, but we had for character in S, perhaps. Maybe some of you used it that way. If you're doing this, actually, let's do this. For character in S, let's say S gets BOBOB. For character in S, let's just print S. Okay, there we go. So it prints out BOBOB. Sorry, print out character. There we go. So this will print BOBOB. Now, you can't feed that into a substring, right? What you probably want to do here is perhaps say maybe a range. Let's say we know this is 5 long, so we could say a range of 5. And then if we print again, now char in this case, or it's char, it's really not a character, it's just a shorthand, a variable. You can call this anything you want. We'll still give you the same. Did you see that? I forgot to change this. Anything you want will still give you the same result as what you've got here. Anyway, I think the key thing here is that you'll be wanting to get numbers that you feed into your substring index, right? And 5 is just an arbitrary number here, but obviously the length here is something that's going to be related very strongly to the length of the string that you're being given by the grader.